Hey guys, welcome to my channel. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button if you like this video. With that, let's get into it. Today was an extremely important day for 1A. The Hero Course students had to complete and pass a written exam on the subject they learned this semester. If they wanted to participate in the camp activities coming up next week, YN had pulled an all-nighter to crown the flashcards she made for the important parts, so she didn't mess up. It was hard pushing herself past the usual time she went to sleep. But, to be truthful, she had no other choice. This exam was really important to her, not just for the camp, but for her to do well in the general studies and aim to be in the top 10. All her friends were in the top 10 and doing so well. Even Mina had improved over the weeks through Yaru's tutoring lessons and got into the 9th place. Kirishima was ranked 6th and Sarah ranked 8th. And above all, her own boyfriend Katsuki was doing well too by placing 3rd in the class. She felt embarrassed to be the only person amongst her friends doing so poorly, and this was her only chance to improve before the end of the term reports are due. So, she must give it her all. There were only 3 minutes until the exam ended, and YN was quickly scanning through her work for the 4th time now. Her eyes would glance up at the clock every now and then to see how much time she had left, which only added to her nerves when the end of the exam was close by. She knows that she has looked at the paper more than enough, but she couldn't help but check her calculus questions one last time to make sure she wrote the formulas right, and check her English vocabulary to make sure she spelled each word correctly, and make sure to answer all her hero analytics. And time's up. The pit of her stomach sunk. Everyone's small sighs of relief filled the room as they put their pens and papers down. Apart from YN, she still wasn't sure if she had truly done everything to the best of her ability. But what could she do now? She couldn't add anything down, nor look it over again, or else she would be considered for cheating, which she definitely didn't want in her record. So, what's done is done. Unfortunately, all she could do now was hope for the best and just turn it in. The person in the back row took each of their papers. Sarah had to wait for a few seconds to pry the papers out of YN's hands since she was sulking, before he set them on the pile on Aizawa's desk. Aizawa punched the papers up with a disengaged hum, then held them in one hand and took up his sleeping bag in the other. "That's all for today," he said flatly. "Pack up your things and head back to the dorms. Your results will be out tomorrow." "Yes, sir," the class responded as Mr. Aizawa trudged out of the room, grumbling to himself about the test taking too much of his time. The whole students broke into chatter about how they went while they packed their belongings. Mr. Aizawa's tiredness must have been contagious, because YN was feeling it too. This exam had drained so much of her energy, with her brain so fuzzy and her body so weak to the bone that she couldn't even bring herself to leave her desk. Perhaps she should take note of this. To not stay up until 4 in the morning without sleep or food. That was a bad idea. YN? Mina broke through YN's lethargic state of mind as she stood up by the door with a confused look. "Are you coming? We're gonna play board games in Sarah's room and order pizza now that exams are finally over." "Kirishima's buying, by the way," Sarah added with a wiggle of the brow which, funnily enough, earned him a hard punch in the shoulder from Kirishima. Oh, right. Mayan plastered a smile on her face and forced her tired self out of her desk. Yeah, I'll come. Sorry, I was just thinking about something. It's alright, Mina waved off. Mayan took her time to grab all her stationery before putting them in her bag. Mina, Sarah, and Kirishima waited for her by discussing what pizza they should order and how to keep the pricing cheap for Kirishima. Katsuki stood next to them, seeming like he was listening. But truthfully, his attention was really focused on YN. Something felt off to Katsuki. Ever since yesterday, YN hasn't really spoken a word to him, other than a quick goodbye when she went back to her dorm after class yesterday. She didn't reply to his goodnight message. She didn't go to the field. She didn't go where they usually went for a night walk, seeing as they hadn't publicized their relationship to anyone yet. Nor did she even greet him this morning. He gets that there are going to be times they won't be around each other, but even so, this wasn't like YN to flat out ignore him. And as he watched YN making her way towards them, his unsettling hunch was right. One moment, YN was walking towards them. Then suddenly, she began to lose balance and crashed to the floor. Kirishima, Mina, and Sarah called out for YN in panic as they rushed towards her. Katsuki stood there, with his eyes spread far and wide. His back slowly slid off his shoulder. Fire crackled in his palms as fear seared through him, seeing his girlfriend profusely sweating with harsh breath on the floor. Later, Mayan's lashes softly batted against her lids before her eyes slowly opened. For a second, everything looked bleary until her vision began to clear up. She couldn't quite tell where she was at first, but when she noticed the blue curtains drawn on the side, the IV machine next to her head with cords running down to the needle in her arm, and her cover girl typing away at her desk, she realized she was in the infirmary. I must have passed out, she thought. The toll she put in her body last night might have done something that damaged her more than she realized. So her cover girl must have been healing her while she slept. Her body still felt a little weak, but not as bad as it was before, and the fogginess she felt in her head had gone down. She tried to sit up and ask her cover girl how exactly she got here, but the hand quickly intervened and pushed her back down. Move, and I'll knock you out myself. Ryan whipped her head to the other side. Her eyes widened. Katsuki, she breathed. His crimson arms narrowed slightly, and she got the sense that he wanted to say something to her. But he kept his mouth shut, since they were not alone. I wouldn't be so quick to get up now, young woman, her cover girl spoke. YN turned to her as she hopped out of her chair and held the end of her cane at YN, with a look that was clearly unimpressed. Your friend came here with you practically sweating up a storm. I had to check your vitals and blood sample, see what was wrong, but it all came down to the lack of hydration and hyperventilation, she explained, and her tone became more considerate. You are one of the many kids who have come in here with the same symptoms. I understand that schooling is hard, but it will only get worse if you don't take care of yourself first. YN rubbed the back of her neck, nodding guiltily. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry about all of this. No need to be sorry. Just be more careful next time, Recovery Girl said as she walked towards the door. You stay here for a while until the bag and IV finishes. I'll go tell Mr. Aizawa what happened. Yes, ma'am. Recovered girl closed the door behind her. Mine turned back to Katsuki, and, after an unnerving moment, he finally spoke. You want to tell me why you were avoiding me all of yesterday? And blacked out on me today? She was at a loss for words, remembering how unfairly she acted towards him yesterday, just to study. I'm sorry. Sorry isn't going to cut it! Katsuki shouted, as he suddenly grabbed Wan by her shirt collar, making her yelp a little at the unexpected tug. As he dug his fingers into the fabric with a hard squeeze, the guilt was slowly tearing at Wan's heart when she saw the way he gritted his teeth with such a pained expression. Even though he acts all tough and strong around her peers, she knew better than anyone else that Katsuki was actually more sensitive at heart, which made her feel all the more responsible. Katsuki lowered his head and let out the frustrated sigh. He slowly retracted his hand away from her, and when he spoke again, his attention was elsewhere, with his voice pensive. Do you know how bad you looked? You weren't breathing properly. Your body went ice cold, and you were shaking so badly that you... Katsuki's voice cracked, as his hands curled into shaking fists. You looked like you were on the brink of death, and I couldn't do shit, because I didn't know what caused it. If I'm supposed to be your damn boyfriend, then I should have known what was going on, instead of being pushed aside like some burden. The crack in his voice struck her hard in the chest. She didn't know the extent of her actions, and now realizing how much she kept Katsuki in the darkness made her eyes well up with tears. I'm so sorry. I know what I did was messed up, and I shouldn't have ignored you the way I did, but... She punched up the blankets in her hands and averted her eyes with tears streaming down her cheeks. I wanted you to be proud of me as your girlfriend. I felt so embarrassed to be around you with such a low-ranking class that I wanted to improve my score, to get into the top 10, so I wouldn't be ashamed to be someone like me. All your friends are doing well, but I'm not. Katsuki was taken aback. There was a brief moment of silence, as Wan cried softly to herself, before Katsuki's hand moved to the back of her head and brought her into his chest. You damn idiot, Katsuki grumbled as he placed his head on top of hers and wrapped his other arm around her waist. Did you seriously think I wouldn't want to be with you anymore because of your marks? I don't give a crap about any of that stuff. I did it to you because I can tolerate you and that wacky personality of yours. Not said that you had to go and change yourself for me. Why else would I still be dating you? Wan sniffled. But your friends are doing so well, and you're at the top of the class, and none of that shit matters to me. Katsuki countered. Wan's breathing hitched. Did I come to you that day asking what your rank was, before I told you to go out with me? Did I tell you to fix your grades before being intimate with me and holding my hand? No, I never did, because all I ever saw was you, and how annoyingly beautiful you were. You dumbass. Wan was stunned speechless. For a second, she kept her eyes on the way Katsuki looked at her, before she couldn't help but giggle softly at his way of comforting. Although she still felt ashamed of herself, and the heavy burden she had put on herself felt like it has taken some of the weight off because of how much Katsuki cared for her. He appreciated her for who she was, and that truly meant a lot to her. With a gentle smile gracing her features, Wan wiped the tears away and buried her head into his chest, with a surge of happiness flourishing in her. Thank you, Katsuki. Katsuki scoffed and then placed a kiss on her forehead. Don't go thanking me, he grumbled. Still pissed at you for passing out, so stay here and get better. I'll bring you something to eat later. Despite everything, Katsuki was always a caring boyfriend. Thank you guys for listening. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment. I hope you enjoyed listening to this as much as I did making it. Anyway, goodbye.